Welcome to another episode of Snackin with Steve and Skyler.
I'm Steve.
And I'm Skyler.
And today we're going to be making curry.
Just recently, before the world turned to utter chaos, I took a trip to Thailand for a week and took a cooking class while I was there.
And I've been lucky enough to study, travel, and work in London, where Indian cuisine is very prevalent.
Today we are going to mix the two cuisines together by making 2 Thai curries
and homemade naan and jasmine rice.
So join us, won't you, as we take our kitchen around the world. Let's get snacking.
So to get started today, we are going to start with the naan. It's going to need to rise for 1 to 2 hours. So if we start with this while we prepare the rest of the food, the naan will have time to rise, and then we can throw it in a hot cast iron skillet real quick to cook it up. The first thing we're going to do is combine half a cup of water with 1 packet of instant dry yeast and 1 teaspoon of sugar. Now, technically this step is unnecessary because we have the dry active yeast, but this is just to make sure that it's still alive and that it's working. So the sugar is going to be food for the yeast. We'll see some foaming up. It needs about 15 minutes or so to bloom, and then we can start rocking and rolling with the rest of it. So we've got the sugar in with the yeast, and a quick mix. Set that aside, and we'll come back in about 15 minutes. While that's blooming, the next thing we're going to do is make a quick homemade garlic butter. For that, we're just going to throw a stick of butter in a pan over about medium heat, and then 4 to 5 cloves of garlic. The more the merrier, really, in this situation. And some of that garlic butter is going to go into the naan, and then the rest of it will be brushed on the naan after it's finished cooking.
15 minutes later.
Now that we have the butter and the garlic together melted, and the yeast has bloomed, it's time to start putting our naan together. A little note for the garlic and butter. Once the butter melts and you add the garlic, just throw it on the heat for maybe 30 to 40 seconds and then kill the heat. We're not trying to cook the garlic here. You want as much of that raw garlic flavor to make its way into the butter as possible. So once you get 30, 40 seconds in, you can smell it throughout your whole house. Take it off that heat and just let it sit while you take the time to do the rest of the things here. So the first thing we're going to do is, you can see the yeast has bloomed. We have this huge head here now. So we're going to combine that. First we'll put that in the bowl. Make sure we get everything out of here. And we are going to combine that with approximately a 1/4 cup of Greek yogurt. Here I have full-fat, plain Greek yogurt. Now, 2 cups of bread flour. You can also use all-purpose flour. Thankfully, I had some bread flour, so that's what we're going to go with today. And last but not least, a teaspoon of salt. Sprinkle that in. Actually, that's not last but not least. We also need a tablespoon of our garlic and butter mixture. Now we're going to take a wooden spoon, mix this all together until it forms a shaggy dough, and at that point, we're going to get in with our hands and start working it together. Now, as you're working through this, if you notice that it's a little too dry, just add a splash of water here and there, and conversely, if you notice it's too wet, add a little bit more flour here and there. Mine is looking a little dry, so I'm going to add a little more water to this. And if you can see here, this is what the shaggy dough looks like. So you still have some flour and some dry bread stuff on there. So now we're going to take all of this off of the spoon, and we're going to get in with our hands to turn this into more of a cohesive dough. We are still looking pretty dry here, so I'm going to add a little bit more water. And it's all right if it's a little more wet in the bowl than you are expecting, because we're going to put some flour out on the countertop here when we start to really knead it together. And that'll pick it up and dry it out a little bit more. So first thing we'll do, take a little bench flour, get a workspace going, and we will turn our dough out onto that. where we'll start kneading. Alright. Now, one of the things you shouldn't have to worry about too much with this dough is sticking to the countertop. Because we did put that butter in here, the fat, it helps lubricate it a little bit, so you don't have to worry about it quite as much while you're kneading it. So now that we have a nice cohesive dough, light spring back to the touch, we are going to add a little bit more of that butter mixture to our bowl to lube it up just a little bit before we throw our dough back in here. Give it a quick toss all around to make sure it coats well. And now that we've got that ready to go, we're just going to cover it up and let it rise for 1 to 2 hours. Now, because this does have the butter in it again, it's going to be a little bit more of a slow rise. So it says 1 to 2 hours, and you're probably going to be looking for closer to 2 hours for that rise. And what that's going to do is start to create the bubbles inside. The yeast is going to eat the sugar, create carbonation, and it's going to allow this dough to rise and become nice and fluffy for the future. So now that's done, we're going to let it rock and roll for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and we're going to get into the curries.
The 2 curries we'll be making today are a Penang Curry and a Massaman Curry. First thing we need to do, though, is we need to prep our Thai dry bird's eye chilies. First, we're going to cut them open into little bitty chunks with a pair of scissors, and then we will pour hot water over them to steep for about 5 to 10 minutes, just so they get nice and soft. Just take some nice hot water, pour that over there, and set it aside. Now that our chilies are steeping, we'll go ahead and add everything else to our bullet blender container. Add about half of a red bell pepper, some cilantro stems. Now, normally in Thai curries, they would actually use the cilantro root, but here in America, it's kind of impossible to get cilantro root unless you grow it yourself. Then we'll take our piece of galangal, which is a Thai ginger. It's a little less intense than regular ginger. We'll cut this into some smaller pieces, make it a little easier on the blender. Add 1 medium shallot and about 8 cloves of garlic. Then we have a couple kaffir lime leaves and the rinds of some lime. And in here I have a mixture of kosher salt, cumin, and turmeric. I'll put the measurements on the screen here. Next, off camera, we toasted some black pepper and some coriander together, threw it in a spice grinder. I'll add about a teaspoon of that. And the last thing is shrimp paste. As you can see, it's stuck here. This stuff reeks. Make sure you open a window. It's strong. And to add a little bit something extra, for both of our curries today, I'm going to add a little bit of this fermented garlic ginger that I have. If you want the recipe, we'll put a link in the description below from one Mr. Brad Leone. Now that our chilies have steeped, we'll just empty out all the water and add it all to the blender. Like so. Now we'll put the lid on that, or bottom on that, I guess. And away we go. To add a little bit of liquid to it, we'll pour in a little bit of vegetable oil, just to kind of help get things moving. There it is. Beauteous. And there we have our Penang Curry paste. Yay! Now for our Massaman curry, we'll drain our chilies again. Add those to the blender. Another medium shallot, or 1-inch knob of galangal. Another half of a red pepper. Our cilantro stem. Our garlic. 1/4 cup of peanuts. Our black pepper, coriander, salt, turmeric, and cumin mixture. Then also we toasted off some cinnamon, cardamom pod, and clove. Ground that up, and we will add that. That's it. Do a preemptive splash of some oil. And, wait a minute. Oh, I just forgot something for both recipes. Steve, have you seen my lemongrass? What? This is a lemon. I need lemongrass.
A quick grass cleanup later.
Alright, unfortunately we couldn't find any lemongrass at the store, so the next best thing to use will be some juice from the lemon and a little bit of the rind. And we'll also add a couple more of the kaffir lime leaves to this one, and to the blender. Now we have our 2 curries, so let's make some rice.
And now it's time to make some jasmine rice. This is a pretty simple process. To start, we're going to throw 2 3/4 cups worth of water on the stove, and we're going to rinse off and clean 1.5 cups of jasmine rice. Once the water is up to temperature, we're going to reduce the heat to low, add the rice, and add about a teaspoon of salt as well. Cover and let sit for 15 minutes. Once we get to the end, if it's not quite tender enough, just add a few more tablespoons of water off the heat and let it absorb for about 5 more minutes, and that should come out to the consistency you're looking for. So to start, I've already got the water on the stove, and I'm just going to start rinsing off the rice here. All right, now that needs to sit for 15 minutes, so... Now that our dough has sat for about 2 hours, we can take the top off and see that it has more than doubled in size. So we're going to take it out onto our work surface, and we're going to do a little kneading to get those bubbles down and get it back into a nice, rather uniform shape, because we are going to be splitting this into 6 even pieces, and I need my bench scraper. Now that we've got it in a fairly uniform rectangular oval shape, split it down the middle, and now we'll split this into about thirds. And now we're going to take these and roll them into balls. You can cup your hand like this, and it will come out to something that looks like that. I am no expert, but it would help if I did this on camera, so we'll do one a little bit closer. There you go. It looks like a ball. Actually, I'm really impressed with myself on that one. I am not what you would call a baker. Now, as you can see, some of these are a little bit bigger than others. I love carbs, so those are going to be my pieces. So now that we've got 6 balls, 4 are about the same size and 2 are a little bit bigger, we're going to set them to the side, dust them with a little bit of flour, and then cover them with plastic wrap. They need to rest for about another 15 to 20 minutes for that second round of proofing. While these are proofing, we are going to place our mise for the meat to get ready to put all this together. So we'll see you in a few minutes.
A few minutes later.
Now that our naan has gone through its second proofing, we're going to roll it out and start cooking it up on this cast iron skillet here. So I'll fire this up. And we want this to get rocking and rolling. We don't have a tandoori oven, so this is the closest thing we can get to in my kitchen. So we'll start with one of these. Just give it another quick knead and roll it out with a floured rolling pin. Now you can go any kind of shape you want with this. I'm just going to let the dough tell me what shape it wants to be, because it's going to taste good no matter how you do it.
Hey, it's none of your business what I look like. Don't you try to body shame me.
So we're going to roll these out to about 1/4 inch thick. Now that our skillet is up to temperature, aka really freaking hot, we're going to throw this in and let it start cooking. And while that's starting, we will go with our next roll of naan and get it ready to go in the skillet as soon as the first one is done. And as I mentioned before, because we used that garlic butter in here, in the dough, it's not going to stick to your countertop like you might expect. So there's no need to flour the countertop. It should be just fine. So the first one is starting to puff up a little bit, get a little bit more airy. We'll just keep watching it. I am going to go with the spatula. We may be a little warm on here. We're going to flip this one over. All right. First one's a test. That's for the chef. We'll hope with the next one we'll see some bubbling up. And when you flip it over, that bubbling, that's going to give you that classic naan look where it bubbles on, where it burns on the bubbles or caramelizes on the bubbles. We will call the first one good. It is a little on the toasty side. Didn't bubble up as much. I think we were a little too hot on the skillet, so we've got it down to a more reasonable temperature. And number 2 in. Okay, we're getting some better bubbles this time. Ooh. All right, interesting. All right, so as Annie is telling you, I was completely wrong at the beginning of this. We need to go much thinner. You want to go closer to 1/8 inch, and you want this skillet rocking and rolling because you need to imitate that tandoori oven in order to get the right looking naan.
For our first curry today, we'll be doing our Penang. We're going to start off with a little bit of oil in our wok that's been heating. Swish that around. Then we're going to add some scallions, followed by our shallot, a little bit of chopped garlic, and a couple of carrots. Once the shallots have started to caramelize a little bit, we're going to add about a tablespoon of our curry paste. And stir that around. Now what you're looking for here is for the oils to separate out from the curry. Once we do that, we're going to add about a cup of our coconut milk and let that come to a boil. Adding a pinch of sugar, some of our red bell peppers, and then our chicken. We've got about a pound-ish of chicken breast, because they were gigantic, and 2 chicken thighs. Turn the heat down.
A small simmer and a stir later.
And now that the chicken has cooked through all the way, we will turn the heat off. Grab a nice little bowl and put our nice curry in here. Alright, and now on to the beef. Next for our massaman curry, we'll be doing it with beef. So we'll start a little bit of oil in our pan, nice and hot. And the first thing we're going to be doing this time is we'll be adding the beef. So that way we get a bit more of that fat breakdown and some color on the beef. Next we'll add some of our green onion, some of our shallot, and a healthy pinch of garlic. Maybe a couple. Then add in the remainder of our carrots. Push that all up to the side. And now I'll drop in some of our massaman. About 2 tablespoons, say. And again, once you see the oil from the curry paste start to separate, that's when you go ahead and add your coconut milk and couple pinches of sugar just to cut the heat a little. And once that comes to a boil, add our bell peppers.
Another simmer. And stir later.
Oh, this one smells good. And once the coconut milk's reduced by about half, you can kill the heat. We'll get our giant fancy bowl over here. And slide it all in. So there you have it. 2 different types of Thai curries.
Along with some naan and jasmine rice. Curries can be a little outside of the comfort zone for some people.
But hopefully by us showing you these 2 recipes, you'll be willing to give it a try yourself.
So if you enjoyed our video today, please hit that like button.
And if you want to see what we're doing next time, hit the subscribe and maybe even ring the bell.
So until next time,
Keep snacking. We should also probably snack.
Yeah. And today we're going to be making curry. There's more to this.
There is. Oh yeah. All right. So join us, won't you, as we take our kitchen around the world. Let's get snacking. So today we'll be taking these 2 very similar cuisines and we'll be making them kiss. I forgot what I was going to say, so I just went with that. My garlic butter, though.
All right. We're recording. Mic looks hot. All right. Okay. Damn it. Can you confirm hotness?
You are hot.
Damn right I am.
Snackin with Steve and Skyler, Season 2, Episode 2. Stephen Curry, Take 1.
Technically, you should be doing it because you're Steven.
I'm Steven with a V. PH is bullshit. Cilantro!
Why are you like this?
Imitating Maddie Mac.
Oh, but that was hot.
Yeah, it was boiling a few days ago.
We hot? Hello, Mr. James Brown. Hello, Mr. James Brown. Dude, how are we going to eat this food?
What do you mean?
It's going to be so fucking hot.
Ooh, spicy.
Dude, did you make base?
I hate us so much. That'll do, pig.